What's up, everyone? How's it going? We hope you're well. Mike, you sent me a video that contains one of these weird one-offs that we love so much.
Yeah, dude. I love them. And this one is awesome.
Yeah, this one it gets a little confusing in my heart because it doesn't have as much, second sourcing as I'd like.
Sure, yeah. And it's just one guy that witnessed the whole thing. So it's just really one guy's story. It might as well be creepypasta, but
how many books do we have where they cover these one-off cases seen by one person?
Right. And that's what I'm saying. And it was originally published by Phantoms and Monsters with God damn it, why can't I think of his name?
Lon?
Yeah, Lon Strickler.
Yeah.
I couldn't get Lon Chaney out of my head.
I was trying not to say Sean Strickland.
Oh yeah, no, Lon Strickland, yeah, or Strickler, whatever. Phantoms and Monsters is where it was originally reported, and he was, I guess, Lon Strickler actually interviewed the guy and talked to him and everything. So,
can you get into what Phantoms and Monsters is a little bit, just in case? One of our listeners hasn't heard of it, because I don't think I've even been there yet.
I mean, honestly, as much as I hate to say it, I don't think I've been there. Like, I've read so many stories that were like second sourced from Phantoms and Monsters, and I follow them on Twitter and stuff. But I don't oddly enough, I've never actually direct sourced from them. But it's a website that basically covers cryptids and weird shit.
And he's the one who covered all the Michigan Mothman site. Well, all Mothman.
Yeah, he did a lot of the investigation for a lot of those Michigan Mothman sightings.
Yeah, it's been around for quite some time. He's a consummate professional when it comes to his website. So
yeah, he's not like fucking, Dave's Fantabulous Cryptids.com. He's legit. He's not some dude who's just gonna take something off of Reddit and post an article about it.
Well, this case is called the Riegelsville Encounter, and it took place in 2012. The video mentions supposedly this case could be found in the MUFON case files, but he says something that I've never heard of, and this video is like a little bit more than a year old. But he mentions that giving us the case file number would be useless, as MUFON has begun obscuring their records by changing their actual case numbers.
That's kind of weird, isn't it? Especially in the age of disclosure that we're in.
Right. It seemed very weird to me. I've heard a lot of people say that MUFON's half full of shit. There's a lot of people who say don't bother reporting shit to them, but
yeah, and I don't know if you remember a while back, I covered part of a book specifically about the cattle mutilations, but there's a book called hold on. Where the fuck is that book? Okay. So there's a book called The 37th Parallel, and I covered that a while ago. But I think his name was Chuck Zukowski, who was the investigator that was doing a lot of... He's not the guy who wrote the book. A lot of the book is written about this Chuck Zukowski guy. But he did a lot of UFO investigations and investigated the cattle mutilations. And I think it was either his sister or his cousin was in MUFON, but he refused to join because he thought they were full of shit. And he's like, I'm investigating on my own. I'm investigating legitimate shit, and I don't trust that MUFON is gonna, do a actual decent job at investigating this.
That's interesting. I hear there's like a lot of infighting and people vying for positions there.
Yeah, and it seems to be very regional too. Like they're all part of MUFON, which is like the greater community, I guess, but they're kind of working independently,
Right.
based in the region that they're in.
I had not heard from anywhere, and if you have, I'm sure you would have told me or brought it up because you keep your ear closer to the ground with the UFO stuff than I do. But I had not heard of MUFON being accused of switching any case numbers around.
Yeah, that's the first I had heard of it as well. But I mean, really, as far as MUFON is concerned, I don't really pay all that much attention to what shenanigans they get up to. I think they serve a purpose in documenting the reports, but I don't think there's going to be any breakthroughs coming from MUFON. I think they're great at or I shouldn't say great, because obviously they're changing numbers to obscure things, but I think that having them document and kind of preserve these reports will be important should disclosure ever take place, and we can kind of see what may have been legitimate cases, what may have been, like, I'm sure if we looked at MUFON files from early on in its history and kind of looked at what military technology has been declassified, I think we'd see a lot of overlap there. And I think as the years go by, that's going to be the case as well. As things become declassified, you're going to be like, oh, that explains these UFO sightings, or that explains these UFO sightings.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like J. Allen Hynek said, it's that 5% that they can't explain. That's where the interest lies. We can, the average person on the ground, they see something in the sky that's not your conventional plane. We're not going to know what the fuck that is. So to us, everything's a UFO. Ball lightning is a UFO. Fucking classified military craft. It's all UFOs because we don't know what the fuck it is. But, there, even among all of that shit that we don't know, there's still stuff that's flying over or hover or appearing in our skies, let's say, because who knows if they're actually flying or what the fuck they're doing. But we're seeing these things in the sky, and we don't have an explanation for it. We don't know what it is, and the people that are in the know about the classified stuff and the people that would know weather phenomena, they don't know what the fuck it is, and that is where the cool shit and where the mystery is, the stuff that keeps me interested. Because I come on this show a lot, and I talk a lot of shit about this stuff not being what we think it is, and I've become very skeptical in my old age. I will admit that, but there's still those cases that are unexplainable. And that's what keeps me around. That's what keeps me interested. The fact that despite all of this stuff, all these huge cases being debunked, like there's no Nessie, all these cases that we can easily say that aren't real, but there's still these cases out there that nobody knows what the fuck it is and nobody can explain it. And that's why I'm not sick of doing this. You'd think we're going on 10 years now, and you'd think after all this time we'd A, run out of shit to talk about, and B, just get sick of doing it. But I mean, this case was brand new to me when I found it. And, I had never heard of this case. So I sent it to you, and you had never heard of this case. And that's the fucking cool shit. We've never heard of this, and we've been doing this for fucking 10 years.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I love that shit. And in talking about like all of our books that we get a lot of the shows from, that's kind of like a secret ammunition, you could say, is finding these old books about paranormal stuff that are kind of old. They're just old ass books. One problem, if you guys want to like find these old books and check it out yourself, you're going to run into 50 books that all have Nessie in it, that all have the disappearance of Amelia Earhart and stuff like that. But those are the ones that have those cool one-offs. And it seems like this case is just one of those, but not in a book. It's just in the internet. Somebody like the Lon Strickman has done a good job of Striker. What's the
Skywalker?
Ron Stryker. He's done a good job of keeping
Dave Skywalker. That's
he's done a good job at cataloging these weird things. It's basically those books, but now his shit's been around as long as some of these old books that we're pulling cases from. So I like.
Yeah, I mean he's like a modern day Jerome Clark.
Yeah,
even though Jerome Clark is also a modern day Jerome Clark because he still exists, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, get any book by Jerome Clark. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, dude rules. Love that guy.
But just to, I don't know, I had to ask this because you're talking about the mutilation stuff, and you mentioned the age of disclosure. This case being 2012, a pretty recent fucking case too that we haven't heard of. With all the disclosure that's going on and how there's, I mean, you said they're going to like slow trickle it to us. It just kind of seems like they're just giving us the runaround at this point. Do you think that they're doing, I mean, we all know they're doing that on purpose for some reason, but this case and a couple of things I read after it, do you think that they're doing that so we focus on wanting the answers about these UFOs while we ignore 70 years of cows being butchered in ways that people can't do?
So I'm of two minds on this. One, I think that either the first case scenario is that they being the military and the government are just as in the dark about this as we are. And that's why there's all the secrecy, because they don't fucking know. So rather than say we don't fucking know, they're saying it doesn't exist. That's case number one. Case number two is that the military abduction scenario is legitimate, and the entire UFO alien abduction thing is being staged, which again is not to say that there is an actual UFO phenomenon in addition to this. I think that there's some combination of that, but I strongly feel that the mutilations and the abductions are all I strongly feel that it's human related, and it's just how it's being done is how and why really is the big question here. And then you can go deep down the rabbit hole and be like, well, they're involved in it, and then they're in cahoots with the aliens, and start going down the Phil Schneider rabbit hole, which is a fucking wild rabbit hole to go down, and I have a blast doing it, but I don't know how much I actually believe it. I'm not sitting here calling Phil Schneider a liar. I think that his story was true to him, but I think that his story was like a implanted memory. I don't think that's actually what happened, but I think him talking about it started opening up things, which is why he was likely killed. Because let's be real, that wasn't a fucking suicide. That's just silly.
No, not, yeah, that's ridiculous to think that was a suicide. It just got me thinking, because with that, I don't know, this new Arrow team, maybe they're going to start investigating cattle mutilations. They said it's like a all terrain or all area that they're going to cover everything. But I don't think they're going to rush to cover that stuff. There's more evidence of unexplainable cattle mutilations than there are of UFOs. And I think people should start asking about cattle mutilations and abductions more than worrying about UFOs.
Yeah, but isn't it interesting that both of those things are tied to UFOs, especially the cattle mutilation thing, when they happen independently of UFO sightings, typically. The people, the farmers that are dealing with this don't typically report seeing UFOs. Yeah. They just report their cattle's being mutilated.
I always felt that the cattle mutilation stuff was lumped in with UFO stuff. It was kind of stuffed and forced to be connected to that stuff.
if anything, what's being reported more than UFOs with cattle mutilations are the black helicopters.
Right.
So, I mean, why is that? Like, it gets mentioned, obviously, but why is that the biggest? That seems like that should be the biggest thing, and instead it's always being pushed as aliens and UFOs, and there's no evidence to back that up. It's fucking weird. I don't get it. It doesn't make sense,
Makes me think of the episode we did about who controls our airspace. Really, there's just like this case we'll go into. There's in a place where they say they watch the skies, even with radar, this type of thing shouldn't be being reported. But I'll jump into it now. This is reported to.
I know we've been alluding to and just before we get started, because we did go into the fucking. We went off in the weeds about cattle. There's no cattle mutilation in this. This case, this is just a weird sighting, and we went off, and like we do.
Sorry, but back to this case. This is reported to MUFON in 2012, supposedly, and it took place in 2012, June 15th at 1:30 a.m. The person reported this wanted to remain anonymous, so they call him Ryan. He was driving home after hanging out with some friends. And while driving, Ryan saw what he assumed to be a deer on the right side of the road. By its movements, he figured it was going to try to cross the road. If you live where deers are, like we've talked about, you're going to hit them, and you can tell how they're going to move when they're going to take off. So he immediately started to slow down. And as he did this, his attention was immediately grabbed by what he saw next. He said he saw a glowing cashmere blue-colored light emanating from the visor or mask of a tall man standing on the side of the road. Then the deer darted across the road, running straight up to this dark figure. Just then, his headlights lit up both the figure and the deer. And that's when he realized that 1, this was not a deer, and 2, this was not a man. He said the creature had the same shape and was about the same size of a deer, but it had the head closer to a dog's, with an extremely elongated snout and very small ears, and it was covered in a brownish grayish leathery skin. And he said it also moved in a very strange manner. He said the figure had on like a black coverall type suit with boots and gloves that all connected, meaning 100% of his skin was being covered.
Like a full body condom.
Right, but with gloves and separate gloves and boots. He also had a helmet with, like you said, a visor that shone a bright blue light. And he said that he had on, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, like a waist tool belt that had a bunch of tools. He likened it to something like a Navy SEAL would carry.
Or something like a Rob Liefeld character, perhaps.
Right.
Many pouches, lots of things.
And if you thought this was just some dude being weird on the side of the road, he said the guy was 7 feet tall, at least. He said it could have been bigger, but it was at least 7 feet tall. First, what do you think about this description, Mike? You talked about that this case gave you a certain type of feel, probably because it's something that's going to happen later. But just off this description and seeing this animal, what do you think about this?
Well, so at first, when I was hearing this, and I'm still not completely opposed to this idea, that it was a dude who was walking his greyhound that got off its leash, and the greyhound ran across the road back to the guy, and the guy was wearing a headlamp. That was my initial thought on hearing this description, and because he says it looks like a deer, and greyhounds are long and lanky like a deer. He said it had an elongated head, kind of like a dog's, which a greyhound does have an elongated head like a dog because it is a dog and it has an elongated head. And he said it had grayish brown leathery skin. Greyhounds have very short fur. So quickly, I know he said he slowed down to 15 or 20 miles an hour, but you're still going pretty fast. So your headlights are going to illuminate this thing. It's going to run in front of your car. You're going to be like, what the fuck was that? And then it's going to cross the road to this guy wearing the mask. And when you're driving, maybe it was just a guy who was tall You know, maybe he's like a 6.5 foot tall guy or something, and you're like, oh shit, that guy's fucking tall. But you don't really, it's not like he got out with a fucking yardstick and measured the guy, you know? And because he was driving by fast, maybe the headlamp was like a LED light, so it gave off a bluish light. And he just perceived it as being like a glowing cashmere light. But with what comes next, there is very likely more than just my mundane explanation. I would think anyway.
When I first listened to it, I very much got the same impression. I thought that this could be somebody walking their dog with a headlamp, believe it or not.
Yep. I mean, that makes the most sense, right?
Right. I don't know what state this. What's it called? Somethingsville.
Riegelsville.
Riegelsville. Yeah, I don't know where that is. So I don't know if somebody who would be walking their dog out at night would require a headlamp, but it is 1:30 in the morning.
It's Pennsylvania, by the way.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't been a dog owner since I was a little boy. Is taking your dog for a walk at 1:30 in the morning a common occurrence, Mike?
I mean, it really depends on your habits. I can't say that I've never taken a dog for a walk in late at night. I definitely have. So I don't. It's all, you know. If you're a night person and sometimes you just want to go for a walk, and dogs are always down for walks, so you're like, I don't want to go alone. I'll just bring a dog.
Right.
And if you're going out on a country road, why the fuck not? You know.
It was just some retired basketball player taking his dog for a walk because he has insomnia. Scared the shit out of some dirty little kid who was drunk and high, with his friends.
Let's not make presumption about Ryan's character here, Mateo. You're casting just you're besmirching his good name.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. We'll get back to this. You said that he drove by like at 10 to 20 miles an hour, and that's what he said. He said that he got within 7 feet of both this being and the creature, and the man being type thing made direct eye contact with him as best he could see, I guess. So this got this glowing light coming out of this visor place, but he said it followed him as he drove by. And when he passed them, he looked back in his rearview mirror to see them staying there, but they were gone. He said they weren't walking around this bend in the road that he was driving on. They were just all of a sudden gone. And now this is where it gets a little freaky for me. This is where I don't know what the fuck this is. He said that he felt, and I got to stop the story there. I'm big on feelings. Most of my feelings are wrong. Everybody says trust your gut, and every time I've done that, it's gotten me nothing but trouble. But there's certain feelings that I know that I can trust. And when people hear a story when they say they felt this or they perceived that, does that like raise a red flag for you? For me, it's I can totally understand what this guy's gonna say next.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it would depend on the story as to whether or not it raises a red flag. Like, I don't think him saying this is bullshit. Like if that's what you mean by raising a red flag, but the feeling, like we've talked about the fear feeling, whenever something is about to happen, you get that fear. So like I get that aspect, but this seems to be a little bit different than that.
Yeah, it sure does. Well, he said that he felt that the being was calling to him. He said that he could feel the being wanting him to come back, and that there was a strong urge to turn around. And he started to become flooded with feelings of peace and tranquility. He then suddenly realized that unintentionally he had come to a complete stop right in the middle of the road. And this freaked him out greatly, so he hit the pedal and headed home.
Sure, I would too. Fuck that.
Hell yeah. Now, you were talking about military abduction stuff a little bit ago, and we all know about memory implant stuff. We've talked about that. Nobody got to this guy physically. We know that there are reports that aliens are able to talk to us telepathically. This is not even that. This was super alarming to me. This is something that was able to, I don't know, what's the best way to put it? control the emotions and feelings. Aliens being telepathic to communicate, yes, but to control the emotions and feelings of something, to me, that doesn't. So far in the story, I wasn't thinking alien at all. How about you?
No, and honestly, I'm still not thinking alien.
Same here.
Like let's think about the abduction scenario for a minute and the way that the abduction scenario typically plays out. It typically, when the person remembers being abducted, because in some cases the person just wakes up in the middle of the abduction, they're there on the ship. But typically in an abduction, the person will they experience obvious fear at first, but then they experience like this feeling of peace, and oftentimes they will say that the beings that are abducting them will try to calm them down, and they'll kind of feel this feeling of peace. So it makes me think that there might be some rather than psychic, maybe it's actually some form of technology that's being used to manipulate emotions. Or maybe it's some technology that's used to heighten psychic ability. Because we've talked about MK Ultra so many times on the show, but we know that the government has done experiments with mind control and trying to do telekinesis and things like that.
Remote viewing.
Yeah, remote viewing. The men who stare at goats thing, where they're trying to train people to kill a goat with their mind. So we know that the government had interest in this, or the military at least had interest in these abilities. So what if they were actually able to kind of refine those abilities and develop technology that would allow people with these abilities to kind of amplify that, where they could actually kind of, because the guy he said it wasn't like he was hearing a voice in his head. He said it was more like a pull almost that was kind of like calling him back.
Right. No telepathy, no actual talking.
Right. So it's more like a sensation he got that was kind of drawing him back. And then when that didn't work, he was overcome with peace and tranquility, and then he slowed down and stopped. Notice he didn't turn around, but he slowed down and stopped. So I wonder if like that peace and tranquility thing, when the pull to bring him back didn't work, it switched tactics, and it's like, let's just calm him down and soothe him to the point where he stops, and then we can go to him. But he broke out of it and was like, fuck you, I'm out, peace, and then floored it and took off.
I think you're onto something there. I definitely think he was stalled so that they can go to him, because when he did snap out of it, he said it was pure terror time. He cut out.
And again, that pure terror, it's that the fear feeling.
Yep. The holy shit light. We're talking a lot about memories. That could be done. We talked about how somebody with like dark medical goggles and like a head cap and a face mask to somebody who's on drugs that we don't even know about can describe what they see later as a gray alien. They're very similar looking.
Yeah, definitely.
What do you think about memory implants? Like there's like the False Memory Foundation or something like that, as this group to try to prove that people have false memories. And there's a lot of stuff I study on the site where I'm not so much sold on the idea of memory implant, working, having those things work.
See, I'm of the completely opposite mind on that. I think with enough trauma combined with pharmaceuticals or psychedelics, that an experience can be created. And whether it be people having these experiences of alien abduction and experiments, or whether it be people having the memories of seeing gigantic owls, or whether it be people having experiences of like ritualistic abuse or things like that, or participating in stuff like that. All this stuff can be easily manipulated, and an experience can be created very, very easily with the use of models, prosthetics, costumes, basic Hollywood movie tricks combined with pharmaceuticals and psychedelics, as well as perhaps mental and physical abuse. That can all be used to break someone's psyche and allow you to basically create the experience that you want them to remember, and not what the actual purpose of this was, which, like the military abduction scenario, where mostly people have memories of aliens, but sometimes people have memories of men in military uniform. Why is that? There's got to be a reason why these things come through sometimes, why people break programming, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
I think somewhere in there is some truth, but where does the truth lie, and what's actually behind it, and what's the fucking purpose?
Yeah, that stuff that Dr. Turner was talking about, to where one of her subjects, I guess somebody she was helping out, talked about them coming to during this abduction, and somebody else who was abducted with him actually getting up and putting on some type of coat and going to work at whatever facility they were abducted and taken to. Maybe it's just the name, false memories. Because I think I agree with you there. I mean, with enough abuse and pharmaceuticals and psychedelics, I think that can definitely, they can shape whatever memory they want that way. But I don't think there's some type of cool machine that just implants memories in their brain like fucking Star Trek. I don't agree with that.
No, I don't think it's anything like that. I think it's something it's a created experience. Like, I don't think that it's something like it's and there's probably heavy use of hypnosis too. Like when you see this thing, actually it's this thing, and you get that, conditioning sort of situation. Because a lot of that stuff, like a lot of the MK Ultra and the, like, all of that, the Manchurian Candidate, like that whole thing is very closely tied together with the alien abduction stuff. Like it's all like piggybacking off of each other. It's all like part of the same tree, just different branches.
Right. Well, the story actually continues. This dude actually reports that in 2016, at this time, him and his girlfriend had moved into a rural area, and they started seeing flashing lights in the woods behind their home. At first, they thought it was some type of camera flash, because that's what it looked like to them, exactly like a camera flash. But they ruled that out, as the lights would jump around in the woods and appear to be about 10 feet off the ground. He said it would happen almost every night they stepped out on their back porch to have a cigarette, and it bothered them so much that it would cause them to retreat into the home. Now that's a weird one. A flashlight. We've talked about that unknown camera, the invisible camera flash before, but this,
yeah.
But this is something that's flying around in the woods, flashing, and that's weird. It's usually just a solid light, not a flash. I found that very interesting. They eventually got sick and tired of being creeped out so much that they couldn't even go on their back porch to have a cigarette, that they went and grabbed a spotlight, a shotgun, and hopped into their truck and headed to the edge of the woods on their property to see what was the cause of these lights. They sat and waited until, sure enough, they saw a bright flashing light. They could not see what was causing the light, what the light source was, just the light itself. So they sat there and watched it and drove back to the house after they couldn't find a source of this light. When they got back to the house, they were surprised to see that they had a much better view of this light in the woods from their back porch. So they sat there and watched it for a second, and just then they heard what they assumed was a large airplane coming overhead. Now, I've always lived by an airport. For some reason, no matter where I've lived, I'm pretty close to an airport. And those big fucking passenger jets can shake your house when they get close and they're low enough. And that's the sound that he heard. It was a loud, big carrier passenger jumbo jet. So
I've had kind of a weird experience with loud aircraft noise before. when I lived at my old house, I heard it sounded like a fucking helicopter was landing. And I went across the street. We had a park, and then beyond that was a baseball field, and off to the side was this wooded area. And so I went over there. I'm like, is there a fucking, like, I was fully expecting at any minute for a fucking helicopter to fly over, like really low. Like it was so loud, it sounded like it was just above my head. And I stood there in the field for like 5 minutes, and this thing super, super loud, and then it just stopped. Nothing ever flew overhead, and it sounded like a fucking helicopter, man. It was coming from the sky, and I never saw light or anything.
That's definitely weird. Yeah, I've had the house rumble and shake from big old jumbo jets, and you get used to the sound that they make and how it shakes the house. I've even experienced a. Hold on, listen, you hear that?
What's that?
A chopper. You talked about a chopper, and now one's here. I'm too scared to look at what color it is. I've even had the Blue Angels, the fighter jets. When they do their air shows, they practice at an airport that's really close to me. So
I've had them fly over my house back in the day. We used to have it's a decommission now. It's where it's a old Air Force base where it's the one where Woodstock 99 was, but they do air shows there still, and the Blue Angels will fly over the area. Dude, it's crazy. They're so fucking loud.
Dude, isn't it absolutely incredible how loud they are?
Yeah. When the first time they flew over, I didn't know that there was an air show going on, and I just hear this unbelievably loud noise, and I went outside, and it was 3 of them in formation flying over.
Man, yeah. They will literally rattle your windows, set off car alarms and shit. Well, he looked up with his girlfriend, expecting to see some type of big plane like that. But what they saw instead was a giant triangular craft, black in color, slowly passing overhead. And he said that this thing was only about 100 or so feet above them, which is frighteningly low. That's insane.
Especially because he said it was slowly flying.
Yeah, exactly. And he mentions that again. He said that it had 3 flashing red lights, one on each point of the triangle with several smaller lights in between them. He noted that it made the sound of a large jet, but if it was a jet and it was that close to them, it would have blown their eardrums out, because it was only, like he said, 100 feet above them, which is fucking crazy. He also mentioned that it moved far too slow to be any type of airplane or jet otherwise. He said it was about 30 feet in diameter, and get this was weird, had cube-like features. That's a weird one. I mean,
yeah, like, what does he mean by that? Because it was that's weird. Like, was it in my head when I heard that, I was thinking it was like something, it was pixelated. Like, that's the impression that I got.
Interesting. I didn't think of that. Maybe. I thought of the Borg from Star Trek. I'm a fucking loser.
Oh, like a literal cube.
You knew what I was talking about. You're a fucking loser too. Put her here, pal.
Yeah. I don't even, like, honestly, I'm not I've never seen a single episode of the original Star Trek, never saw any of the movies, and I've seen like 2 or 3 episodes of The Next Generation. And, but I'm so immersed in other nerd things that I'm very aware of Star Trek stuff.
The craft slowly floated over the woods, stopping only for a moment directly over the flashing light, where it disappeared. The flashing light disappeared. Ryan said that they felt that the triangle craft was picking up some sort of probe. And he said that this freaked out his girlfriend enough that she refused to ever investigate the lights in the backyard again.
And they quit smoking cigarettes as a result, too, because they didn't want to go outside, didn't they?
Yeah, they had quit smoking. Now, this is classic UFO stuff. This is,
yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
Even a triangle craft. The light in the woods being 10 feet in the air. I mean, I almost thought for a minute that it was just your classic ghost light. Brown Mountain
Yeah, sure.
type thing.
Will-o'-the-wisp sort of situation.
Yeah, but then this craft came and picked it up, or at least this
Yeah.
flashing light disappeared when it stopped over it. So I mean, I can only assume it picked it up, but
Right. And to me, like if these two things are connected, it's almost like the being he saw marked him, and then they were surveilling him with whatever this flashing light was. And then when he was about to discover it, they had to call in the extraction team and take care of it so he didn't discover what was going on.
possibly this is 4 years later. Maybe they would, they would most definitely wait that long, but that is quite some time. Maybe that's the first time they noticed it.
Yeah, maybe it had been there all along, and they're just like, what? Either they weren't paying attention to it or didn't notice it, and then this was the day.
Right. Well, he said that there was no more flashing lights that night, but the flashing lights did indeed continue and actually got way, way, way worse. He said that the lights would be so bright that it appeared that they were outside their bedroom window and it would wake them up. And he said that it would always be at 3:33 in the morning.
There's your paranormal spin.
Exactly. That's that, quote, witching hour, the 3 a.m. stuff, which I've probably been awake more at 3 a.m. than like 90% of the fucking population, no joke. And I don't ever see an increase in weird stuff happening at that time. I kind of, in my experience, if you really have something weird in your house or something weird going on, it doesn't fucking matter if it's nighttime or daytime.
Yeah. Paranormal activity doesn't give a fuck about your clock.
Not at all. You said that the lights just continue to flash, at their window in the woods when they were outside. It caused so much disruption that they just moved. And he said that nothing like that ever happened again. Now, you had mentioned a certain figure that this story gave you the feeling of.
Yeah, I don't really know why, because there's nothing about it that really relates to it, but for some reason I got the like a Indrid Cold sort of feeling to it. And I don't know if it's because it was like a encounter on a lone highway and then like a connection was made that led to further contact down the road. But just something about it just kind of, it gives me that sort of impression. Like that's what this thing was trying to do, was like an Indrid Cold sort of situation. And the guy's like, fuck you. And so he's like, I'm going to set up surveillance then, and we'll get you one way or another. And the guy's like, I'm moving. And then Indrid Cold was sad because, he just wanted a dog sitter. Excuse me, sir, I need to go on an intergalactic adventure. Could you watch my dog? But the dude didn't want to. He could have been paid in space dollars, Mateo.
And had a fun few hours with a purebred greyhound. But he let fear win.
A purebred space greyhound.
Yeah. I don't know. I didn't get Indrid Cold vibes. What I felt vibes of immediately was Bibendum, and I think the reason I got that feeling is when it comes to Bibendum, and well, let's go with other alien sightings. It's always them standing around, them maybe reaching out. This very weird dreamlike state report of seeing these things slowly floating around the room and talking with their mind. When it comes to Bibendum, it doesn't seem to be in a dreamlike state. It's something that's very real and there, and very much a different species of alien maybe. And I don't know, those scare me more. I thought of drill hands. I thought of Bibendum. It's somebody encountering something that's not your typical alien, and I mean, really so far off of any other alien species reported. This thing in an all-black suit with a glowing blue visor. What in the holy fuck is that? And then it has a pet. I mean, the kid Ryan goes into detail about how this creature, he said it had like backwards legs, so that had helped him come to the decision that it was probably a deer. But he says that, it wasn't a deer and it wasn't a dog. It was something he didn't know what it was. But he says that when his headlights hit this creature, like you said, he saw that first, that it scattered like a dog to its owner. And it kind of looked at the owner like, what do we do next? So it made me think of your Mothman being an escape pet type thing. Maybe that's
Yeah, maybe that's part of it too. The fact that he had a little pet sidekick.
yeah, that's very weird. I mean, there's a report of those. God, I forget. It was those Russian giant robots that had little tiny robot companions, but I don't think I've come across a case where an actual being had a companion with it, like a pet companion.
I want more beings to have pet companions. That makes them even more fun.
It does, and it would make them like a cool trading card game. I'm boosted by companion power.
Yes, I have Space Greyhound ally.
Ally.
Well, I have the Mothman ally.
I just don't know what to make of the being. I mean, he said at least 7 feet tall, maybe more. There's not too many 7 foot tall people walking around. People that tall usually develop some health problems from being that big. I think what Kevin Peter Hall, who was the Predator, was 7'4", and he was healthy. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was is 7'2", 7'3". So I mean, there are people that tall, but for him to reach out, not telepathically, but this weird emotion manipulation, it makes me think of like a fucking X-Men villain. It's such a weird experience, a weird encounter.
Yeah, it's a very weird one, and I don't know what to make of it. Again, it's one of those things I don't want to doubt the person reporting it. And to me, if it's a coincidence that he saw this thing and then this flashing light thing, that seems so unlikely, you know? Like, that doesn't seem likely that he's going to encounter two separate, unrelated, weird encounters.
Right. I totally agree.
It's definitely something that has to be related. But how it's related and what it is, that's what the question is. And again, this isn't just some fucking like random Reddit post. This was a dude who was actually interviewed and, you know, vetted to the best that you can. And it wasn't somebody who, again, the guy wanted to remain anonymous, but he wanted to share his story.
Right.
And to me, like, one thing it is, like, if you're on Reddit and you're posting about your experience, because then you're clearly doing it for like the views or the hits or whatever. Like, if you're going to an actual investigator and you want to share your story, but you don't want any recognition for it, like, to me, that makes it seem more legitimate, because a lot of people know, like, you report something like that, you're going to be thought of as crazy. But I do think there's value in reporting this stuff. So even if someone wants to report it to like a legitimate investigator who's going to look into it, and they want to stay anonymous, like, to me, like, it kind of makes me believe them.
It's the plan of action I would take. I would talk to somebody from MUFON and report what I saw. I mean, who better to ask if anything else like this had been reported before? So, I mean, I think I would do the exact same thing. I would report it to some type of official place like MUFON, but stay anonymous, just because, I mean, we know people get fucking put on the cross for reporting stuff like this. It's cost so many people their lives in all varying degrees. But we'll wrap it up with this question. I mean, the visor thing. I mean, he said it was possibly a helmet. Now, there's so much about this case that's UFO, alien encounter, close encounter type thing. And there's so much of this that's not. What do you think about these entities that have to wear some type of what seems to be breathing apparatus?
Well, I think it makes sense. If you're a being that exists in a completely alien world, it would, you know, it's like us going to the moon. Why don't we just wear shorts and a t-shirt on the moon? Because it's fucking cold and the atmosphere is not breathable. So that's why. So it could be, you know, maybe they're like an aquatic species, or maybe they've got a different gravity and their suit helps regulate their body so that they don't get crushed, or so they don't jump like we do when we go on the moon, or, you know, whatever the thing. it could serve a lot of different purposes. And if you're thinking outer space alien, then it would make sense that they would have some sort of suit that would allow them to move around on our world. If this was something more terrestrial, say a human or something like that, it's possible that it could just be a disguise. Maybe it was part of an attempted memory implant. Like maybe the intention was to abduct this dude and implant this memory of a weird situation where he gets taken by a alien in a deer dog thing. When you start getting into the why, that to me is where things get scary. Like, what was the purpose behind it? What were they trying to do? What were they attempting there? What would have happened if it had caught him, if he hadn't driven away, or if he had turned around? That's the scary shit.
Yeah, we're talking about the cat mutilation stuff, and like I said, there's plenty of cases that are, truly unexplainable. Why? What do they want with that? They already take people. What do they want with a cow?
Yeah, and why not other animals? Like, it's, for a while it was horses, but now it's primarily cows. Like, why more people own dogs? Why aren't dogs being mutilated? Why aren't we finding dogs like that? Why aren't we finding cats like do you know how many fucking feral cats there are in this country alone? Why aren't cats being found this way?
Mm-hmm.
What about deer? What about fucking goats? Like, it's just weird.
It is. They're trying to make cow babies, alien cow hybrid clones.
Alien cow hybrid things.
Oh,
just
fuck.
Like that.
What if that's the army they're building to take over the world? We gotta fight like
they're building an army of fucking minotaurs.
Right.
That's the whole plan, and they just haven't perfected it yet. But the minotaurs are coming, Mateo. They're coming for you. And they're coming for your sandwiches, and they're gonna bring battle axes, and fucking every city we live in is gonna become a maze. So learn how to do mazes if you want to survive the coming apocalypse of minotaurs.
Thank you for listening to the Whatcast. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, iTunes, and YouTube. Enjoy the podcast. Get yourself a Whatcast t-shirt or a sticker pack. Who was that dude on that one episode? Try the links in Homie's page. All this and more can be found at www.thewhatcasters.com. Thanks again for listening and have a great week.